All right, we're live. So, welcome to another Run Wild with Us. Ask Us Anything. I'm Lisa Kastner. I am the founder and executive editor of Running Wild and RIZE Presses. And I am here with you. And guess what? I'm here with you with Ben, who I'm going to add right now to the live stream.
I
Hey,
made it
Ben.
right on time.
Dude, you're amazing. You're absolutely amazing. Um, so I was just saying how we're here with everybody on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn every week between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern time on Thursdays. And we're here to answer any questions that anybody may have, and it can be about anything, guys. We take questions around publishing, the craft of writing, editing, uh process, the business of writing, business marketing, you name it, right? Because
Quantum physics, we don't care.
physics. I can't wait to hear those answers. That's going to be fascinating. So all you need to do is go ahead and pop those questions into the chat, and we will be more than happy, or rather comment section, and we will be more than happy to answer those questions. So typically what happens is when you put those questions in the comment section, I'll repeat the questions, and then I typically give it to Ben first, and then I'll take them. Now, sometimes we have some of our other editors join us because we love, the more the merrier, man, right? Uh, we actually really do love hearing other people's perspectives and what they're up to. So I actually do. This week I was thinking about it, and we're still going to take all your questions, right? That's a given. That's why we exist. Hence, run wild with us. Ask us anything. That said, I have some questions for you guys. Now, I know I do this every once in a while, and sometimes you answer, and sometimes you're like, middle finger. But it doesn't mean I can't try. So, I have a couple questions for you. My first question is, what do you think is the role of the publisher? And what do you think is the role of the editor? What do you think is the job of the author? And those are my big questions, because I'm really curious. I've had a lot of really fascinating interactions, I want to say, in the last couple of months. And honestly, the industry has been changing so dramatically for years now, right? And it still is, that all these different business models have been popping up all over the place. So and I'm happy to talk about those different business models, because you may want to figure out what's best for you. And how are you going to figure out what's best for you unless you know what those different business models are, right? Right. So but I would love to hear what your thoughts are on those three key things. What do you think is the role of the publisher? What do you think is the role of the editor? And what do you think the role is of the author? And go ahead, you're welcome to just put it in the comments section with as much detail as you would like. You can also email me at editor. Well, let me think about this. Yeah, actually, email me at lisa@runningwildpress.com if you really want to go into a lot of detail. And what I would love to do is kind of take that input back, and we can use it for a future session. Or if you want to go ahead and pop it in now, that would be amazing too. And we can go ahead and talk about it now. But we do get, especially when we make offers to authors for their work, sometimes I get a lot of really fascinating comments and questions, and some of them, I'll be honest, they make me pretty sad, because I'm like, oh my gosh, what led you to ask something like that? Like, what horrific thing did you hear about that made you ask that? So anyway, or did you experience like even worse, right? So I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts. What's the role of the publisher? What's the role of the editor? And what's the role of the author? Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So until we start getting some questions, Ben, how's it going, young man?
It is going well. I'm juggling 3 novels and juggling 2 short story anthologies. So that's 5 juggle books in the air, and they're
Nice.
all in the air. So that's good. Yeah, they're still in the air,
Yeah, that's
and none
yeah.
that they haven't fallen and rolled away. But I actually put another story in Rise today in the anthology manuscript. Over today, we wrapped another one up, and so it's building. And Running Wild Press anthology of short stories is building as well. I think I'm up to maybe 7 or 8 stories there that are done and ready to go.
And Dan Roth asks, so red wine or white wine? What do you think? Yeah, man.
I'm an iced tea guy. Iced tea goes with everything. I don't have to decide what goes with what. It's just iced tea.
Nice. Admittedly, after this, I'm going out for pizza with a dear friend, so it's most likely going to be red wine because red wine goes better with margarita pizza. Just saying. Um, but yep, that and actually there will most likely be a martini involved. It's been one of those fascinating. It's been one of those kinds of weeks. So Don McIntyre, hey Don, it is as normal, fabulous to see you. Says the job of the publisher is to present quality work to the public and to make money for themselves and for the author. The job of the editor is to polish up the manuscript and make it the best that it can be. The job of the author is to present the best quality manuscript possible to the publisher and then cooperate with the publisher and editor and not be an asshole. Can I just say how much I love you for that last comment? Excuse me, a-hole, not be an a-hole.
Yeah.
Those are really, really good. Those are really good and interesting um definitions. That's pretty decent. What do you think? What do you think, Ben?
Yeah. And having edited Don's work, she passed that last one.
All right.
And I don't know if I did or not, but she did.
I
But
don't know.
yeah, I think the publisher, it's uh, like a corral full of wild horses trying to get through the gate, and the publisher gets to decide which wild horse gets through, and then the editor kind of tames it and makes it uh, something the author can still ride, but the readers can ride as well. So it becomes a close partnership when the editor starts to read from a reader's point of view, and remind the writer, the author, we know that what you meant here, but a reader's not going to get that, or they don't need that much detail about something that doesn't directly impact the story. And sometimes it's an eye opener. And me personally, it's been an eye opener working with an editor. And hopefully I take that same approach working with writers to say, this is where you need to tell me more about that because that's interesting and it goes to the story. Tell me less about that because it's not really interesting and it doesn't go with the story. And those things, those conversations, I think you have to be open to those conversations. And sometimes it's the editor's got to give. The editor's got to give. It's not the editor's not always right, and the author's not always wrong. And sometimes it's just the other way around. The author was absolutely right, and the editor need to see it through another set of eyes.
Yep, and we can tell by your comment that you are clearly a poet because the metaphor was fabulous. So I'm just putting that out
all
there.
Those running wild horses.
It's all those running wild horses. Absolutely. Dan Roth commented, and then I'll get back to the thing that the pizza better be from New York. Well, you know what? I live in Los Angeles. But I do have a favorite. I actually have 2 favorite pizza places. One is called Pizzana, Pizzana, and I'm pretty sure the executive chef for Pizzana is originally from New York, and it's the food, it's great. He has two places currently in the Los Angeles area, and it looks like they're opening up a third in Houston. And then my other big favorite one is just, it's a chain that's all of 9.99, but I get to pick whatever I want on it, and that's those nights when you're like, you know what, I just need to stay home. I need to have a bottle of wine or iced tea, whatever it is that you prefer. I need some Netflix, and I just need to binge something, right? And I'm gonna get my pizza on while I'm binging, you know, some wicked show or films or whatever. So, yep, absolutely. Now, mind you, I'm originally from the East Coast. I grew up in New Jersey, so I am completely down with the whole New York pizza thing. And I remember when you could get pizza by the slice in New York for $1 each. So that just tells you that I'm actually only 20 years old based on that. Oh, yeah, okay. Anyway, so Don McIntyre says, Ben, yes, you did. You passed the no a-hole
Good,
test.
good. Thanks,
Woo!
Don.
Um, I actually I love both definitions. So I have a very, I wouldn't say a very different view. I guess it's more of a from a founder's view of what the role is. So I think from a publisher perspective, hopefully that doesn't mean this is how it actually goes down. But hopefully each publisher has a mission, vision, and objectives. Like there's a reason that they exist, right? It's not just that they one day someone woke up and went, I know what I want to do. I want to start publishing some books. I want to start, doing some writing. Hopefully, as I said, they actually did come into it with a mission, a vision, objectives, that there was something that drove them to want to really add to storytelling in wherever, right? Whatever country they're from, whatever city they're from, whatever. And then based on that, hopefully, they then brought on editors who to actually, I think to both Dawn and Ben's points, they brought on editors who their work ethic, their methods for editing and working with the authors align to that mission vision and those mission vision and objectives, right? And along the line, you're going to change your strategy, you're going to change your purpose to a certain extent, right? But really, they fit well within that purpose, within that intent. And then depending on the publisher, some publishers will engage the editors in the selection process of the stories that they pick up. Others, it's more of a dictate. And actually, this is a pretty good metaphor as well for how corporations work with their teams. But some will say, okay, you editor, I would love to get your feedback on these submissions that we received, and I want to know what your thoughts are on it. Others are gonna go through whatever their submissions are, and they're gonna say, all right, it's this, and this. Okay, Ben, guess what you're getting tomorrow, and just be like, right. And some will leave the editor to go off and make revisions or suggestions freely. Others will um, uh, dictate exactly what it is those expectations are. And I think, I feel like, or I don't, I authors, when you guys submit, and understand that both Ben and I are authors as well. So I'm not saying this as if like I'm staring down a long hall and telling you what to do and like I'm not familiar with this, right? Because I'm sure we have all submitted to hundreds, if not thousands, of various publications in some capacity, right? Whether it's a magazine or a journal or, a larger book publisher and distributor. But really, I feel like the core of, if you want to be happy as an author, right, it's not just about sitting down and writing something and then sending it out to whoever it is that might maybe accept it. It's understanding what is that mission, what is the objective of that publisher, and that what you're going to send them, A, it fits within that mission and vision and their objectives and whatever it is that they're accepting in that time. And B, um, that you feel like it's a good fit for you, right? Because, like I know I had an instance where very early on in my career, I found out there was a regional publisher that really accepted more so like how-to books. And I thought, I have a background as well in like program management and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, hey, I could do. I wrote for them Santa's Guide to Project Management, because if you think about it, that man has a killer supply chain. Like I don't know how he gets this stuff done, but he totally does. And I thought that would be fun. Well, I didn't bother to look at what their objectives were. Like I didn't bother to, I just knew that they published nonfiction books. Well, let's just say they didn't find that very funny that Santa was a key, a program manager with great supply chain capabilities. And I wasn't devastated, but I was disappointed because I thought, oh, come on, this is a no-brainer. It's hilarious, right? And but if I would have actually sat back and I would have actually looked at what had they published, what if they had won any awards for the things they published, because that will give you also a feel for, where maybe if they didn't do something like this previously, if they won an award for it or it became a bestseller, they may all of a sudden decide that they're going to refocus on stories like that, right? I didn't do any of that due diligence. And so if I would have found out pretty quickly that no, 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 this really was not their bailiwick, right? They did not do funny. So, you really want to make sure that from the very beginning, this is going to be, a great fit across the board for everybody. And the same thing is true for an agent. Like, I'd also love to find out, what do you guys feel is the role of an agent for the author, and honestly as well for the publisher? And I know that's going to sound weird because I think a lot in this industry, we more so typically hear about the authors going out and trying to find an agent, and how, and then it's almost like you've hit nirvana once you've gotten this agent. And the reality is that it that's not actually true. The agent actually does perform a lot of different functions, but I would love to hear and find out from you guys. Again, feel free to go ahead and email me at lisa@runningwildpress.com and let me know what your thoughts are. If you don't feel comfortable putting it in the comments section, what are your thoughts in terms of the role of the agent? Because it would be, I think that would be pretty interesting. So blah blah blah, talk forever. Anyway, um, so I know you've been knocking stuff out, Ben. I mean, do you still have time for writing?
I do. I make time for writing because that's what early in the morning is all about. That 4 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, you get up
Mm.
and there's the book saying, pick me up and write something. And I do. Um, just finished a collection. Uh, I call it a collection because it hit 51 poems. Uh, let's see, 51. Why
It
not? It's when you're playing cards and you only have three people, you got to take something out, and 51 is 3 times 17. So everybody gets 17 cards.
Okay.
I don't know. It's back in there somewhere. But there was a collection called Petty Days. We were in Petty Days, and then another collection that I was writing at the same time called Monticello. Monticello, from the kind of about the hometown where I grew up. And now I've moved on to Collateral. Collateral is getting some attention. It's up to 14 poems. And the other one, Values. So that's 4 collections all at once in this month.
Wow,
So,
check you
and they're
out.
working their way through.
Well, I'm
And like I said before, one or two of them are pretty good.
I'm sure quite a few of them are pretty good. I'm sure it's much more than one or two. So I have been working on two books. I think I technically have three or four on my plate from an editing perspective. And then we've also been working on how to strengthen our marketing because, you know, I really want, honestly, I want all our books to hit the bestseller list. I want everybody who, could possibly get their hands on one of our stories to get their hands on it. And I want them to love it. To Don's point, I I would love for readers to, or anyone who loves a good story, to check out our stories and just say, "Oh my gosh, this was fabulous." And I also just started working on the follow up to Cure, which I have no idea what it'll be entitled yet. I have not gotten that far.
That was a
um,
good idea to make that a sequel.
you think so?
I do.
Well, I mean, you're my editor, so you're going to end up give me a whole lot of
Yeah.
feedback. I have a sneaking suspicion.
Well, I think if I remember right, I told you to change a scene because it wasn't going to lead into the sequel, and you said, "Oh, okay,
Yeah,
I'll have a
that's true.
sequel."
Yeah, that's exactly what went down. I was like, "Oh, I've got a sequel. Well, thank you." Now I
All you had to
know.
do was tweak one scene, and the character lived and it got to be in another book. It was great.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I remember that conversation. Yeah, and then I was like, "Wait a minute. This could be a series." And you were like, "Why, yes, it could. Let's figure this out." And I was like, "Okay." So, this will
Yes.
too bad we don't live closer to each other. We could just sit around having iced tea and wine and figuring out like, "All right, what's this one going to be?" Should be fascinating though.
It's true.
It is true. Actually, that's another one. To me, the role of an editor as well is to give you suggestions on different parts that, either to strengthen it, or we've had a couple of authors come to us with books that were originally intended to be standalones. And as soon as we got into it, we were like, that this needs to have a follow up, or this should be a series. And they were like, it should. And we just sort of sit down and brainstorm it with them. And we've had some really kind of amazing stuff come down as a result of that. Oh, which reminds me, for all of you guys who are watching, if you have ever read Suzanne Sample's work, either Frontal Matter, Glue Gone Wild, or Stargazing in Solitude, she's going to have a third one that we're going to bring out called 13 Tunnels. That'll be her final memoir. She actually is going to be having a celebration of life. I believe it's on November 19th. I think it's going to be broadcast. I'm not positive. But I have actually been working with both the family, Suzanne's family, as well as with the American Cancer Society. And there is going to be a page, a benefits page, in association with Suzanne's um, uh, a celebration of life. So as soon as I have more information on it, as soon as I have a link to that page for the American Cancer Society and more info on her celebration of life, I will pass it on. I know, like I said, we're all absolutely devastated by her loss, and anything that we can do to continue to celebrate Suzanne and everything that she's done, we absolutely will be doing. And we're actually going to have a couple of really cool announcements soon. And once I have things finalized, because we're working out some details now, then I'm going to send on that information to everybody. So, but she was another one that we were like, this was pretty cool. You may want to do another one. And she went, okay. so, so yeah. So again, we're almost at half past the hour, And I want to remind everybody that you are here with Ben and Lisa from Running Wild Press and Rise Press, and we are here with you on Thursdays between 5 p.m. Pacific time and 6 p.m. Pacific time and 8 p.m. Eastern time and 9 p.m. Eastern time. And we are here to have a little chat with you guys about whatever you want. It can be about creative writing. It can be about publishing. It could be about the business, the industry. It can be about the editorial process. Um, it can be whatever you guys want. And all you got to do is pop your questions in the comments section. I'll repeat them, and then Ben and I each will take a stab at it. Now, some weeks we're lucky, and some of our other editors will join us as well. And that to me is even more fun. Oh, which reminds me, I want to just send a shout out to everybody who is in Florida right now and getting hit by Hurricane Ian. Our thoughts are with you guys. Fingers crossed that you are not heavily impacted and that you and your families are doing well. So I just wanted to do that shout out. Don McIntyre says, how do you figure out how to cut some subplot stuff out of a novel without losing those threads altogether? My subplots have taken over my latest project. All right, I'll let Ben take a first shot at it.
I think first ask yourself if they need to come out. If it's working and the novel is progressing, uh, then it's okay to just polish them up and leave them there. But if you think it's taking your novel away from your vision for it, then let it go outside the novel into another work. You can have those subplots not be as they may not be necessary if they're taking it over, or if another way, the third way to look at it is if your subplots are taking over your plot, maybe the subplot is the plot and let go of the plot. And so you have to really think about what's this novel about, or am I writing? This sometimes happens. Am I writing two novels at once?
Mm,
And you've got to separate them and say that doesn't go there. It's something else. And whether it's a character with a subplot or a scene that you really like and you want in there, but it really doesn't add to the story, take it out and make it its own story or its own novel, and that may help streamline your project. And you can take them back from your characters and their agendas. Don't let your character's agenda take over, unless it just takes over, and then you just cut out the other novel for later.
uh, yeah, ditto on all those points. I think it depends on. So I've seen a couple things happen. So I've seen it where someone they start writing a story and they get maybe 100 pages into it and they realize that, oh, wait, I didn't have to start there. That's actually backstory. Like my first 50 pages was actually all backstory. And what I'm getting into now, this is the real core. Like, this is the real story. It can be very difficult to see that until you are done writing the actual novel, like the first draft, and for good reason, right? So, Don, to your point, I think to what you're implying, you're writing, you're writing, and then you go into a plot, another, some subset of the plot, and you never actually go back to the primary storyline, right? Well, sometimes you don't realize that that's what's happening until after you have finished the first draft, and that's okay, right? In instances like that, when really the first 20, 40, 50, 100 pages is all backstory, you take it out, right? And again, you may not realize that that's what it is until a little bit later. Another way of doing it is, and this is something that so I mentor a lot of authors as well for different organizations, and oftentimes when they feel like it's going all over the place, I literally ask them to take a highlighting pen and highlight, okay, what is that primary story, and some call it top story, right? What is covering the top story? And what that first you want to do that, right? And then, like, let's say you have a primary subplot. What is the primary subplot? And use a different color highlighter for that. What that does, it helps you see what is dominating your story. And to Ben's point, maybe it turns out that what you thought was a subplot is actually the primary story. And you may not be, and by highlighting it, what that does is it helps you have an emotional separation from what you've written so that you can then see, like actually see where your what was intended to be the original plot is and where your subplot is. And you can do that exact same exercise for each subplot. Now, the benefit of doing that exercise for your subplots as well, like all your different subplots, it helps you see when you've gone off on a tangent, right? And what I mean by that is you start writing, something that's associated with the primary story, and really you just intended to go like one or two sentences into why Ben as a kid was a killer basketball player, right? But instead, somehow, when you go back and you highlight it, you realize you've got 10 pages of Ben as a kid as a killer basketball player, because you're talking about how much, he hated doing this and he loved doing this, and you give some anecdotal story about, his experiences as a basketball player and blah 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 blah. Well, now you've created a whole different narrative focused on Ben as a kid as a basketball player that you most likely did not intend. So now you've got to make a decision, and that decision is, um do you need all this, right? What do you want this story to be about? And that will help you trim down to those one or two or three sentences that really supports your primary narrative, your primary plot, and then take the rest out. Now, that does not mean that it has to be deleted, right? Because I know tons of authors who, what they do is when they find that they have now written some, amazing additional storyline, they literally just cut it and paste it into a side document, and then they'll use that as inspiration in the future. What that also does, though, like again, if this is backstory or this is a subplot, it'll help you if you go forward and you write, you make this a series, and you go back to write a future book within the series. Then that way you're like, oh yeah, that's why Ben loves basketball, right? Or and Ben hates, you know his gym shorts. I don't know, I just made that up, obviously,
It's
right?
true. It's true.
It's true. Every word. um so, because you most likely you're going to look back on this like a year later and go, why is it that Ben hates his gym shorts? I don't remember why I have that in there. And then, you can go back and look at your file and see like, oh yeah, that's right. That's what these were the motivations. So, and then the third thing in this one, actually, or I don't know, the 10th thing, I have no idea. I'm just rambling. But another key thing that can help you in this is if this probably won't help you so much as with a novel necessarily, Dawn, but this is very helpful with like short stories and essays. If you already know that you have a limited number of words for it, that can help you determine how much backstory you're going to actually provide, and if you even have subplots, right? Because like we talked about last week, I had written a 500 word, rather 500 page, I wish, 500 word, no, 100 word story based on an image. And with 100 words, there's not going to be any subplot unless you're really creative. Actually, I think we did give it a couple of subplots, but it was like implied. Anyway, um, but it's things like that where you have a limited number of words that forces you to tighten your story and tighten exactly, how complex it's going to be, how many subplots you're going to have, what kind of backstory you're going to provide, all of that. So that's another thing to keep in mind, right? Um, So I don't know. I hope that helps. I don't know. We gave you a whole lot of different ideas, so hopefully something might actually be applicable to the what you're experiencing now. So
And with Don, I think it's having had edited the Paper Pirate. She has 6 characters, and
mm,
I've mentioned it before to Don. It's a skill to give each one of those characters their own personality and their own life outside the bookstore where they all come together. So if you find your subplots don't have that connection where the thread comes back to, for instance, the bookstore, this is what we have
mm,
in common. The other stuff is just not telling us, but showing us their personality and that they have other lives outside of the bookstore, and then weaving them back into the story to say, well, that personality makes sense. What they do in the bookstore makes sense because we know that personality by what you have written about their character coming into the bookstore. And so you know you've got the skill. Don has the skill to see that, and it's if the subplots have taken over, just remember to bring them back into that common place or common scene where it joins. They join.
no, yeah, that's all excellent. And just a thought, so for Cure, anyone goes in and reads Cure, they're going to find there's a primary plot, right? There's a primary storyline, and then what I use are interludes that give you subplots and basically backstory for key characters. So that way it doesn't interrupt the primary plot line and the primary story. Instead, it um, enhances it, and it complements it, right? So the reader doesn't feel pushed out. Instead, they feel like they're kind of in on a secret, if that makes sense. Don says, this is all good stuff. I'm going to give it a shot. I love all my new characters I created, but they have become bullies and are pushing the main plot aside. Well, how dare them?
There he is. Bullies.
uh,
Give them some
Caroline,
counseling.
yeah, totally. Give them some counseling. Absolutely. Caroline Shannon Davenport says, "Hey guys, hey Caroline, good to see you. Good to see you as well. I'm feeling very little backstory needs to be included on the front end. I'm seeing and hearing that no one has the patience today. It is all about getting to the point. I don't know, Ben. What do you think?
Uh, I think there's still got to be some character development, and if it's backstory that does that for the character, then and it's right up front, and you're leading up to the main crescendo of the story. Crescendo, Lisa. How about that? and, if you're working towards that, and the backstory fits in with those characters making sense of how they come together, and and another way is to get to the point and then flashback to the backstory and weave it in that way. And that's what Lisa's talking about in Cure. There's a lot of flashbacks into not just the main characters, but their ancestors, and bringing in the ancestors. Oh, now it makes sense of where this all started, and because no character is an island that's just going to be separate from everybody else. There's going to be some relationships there in a well thought out plot or thought out novel that you want to include and make sure that you make them human. And or if they're a werewolf, you make them a werewolf. if uh, Even make your werewolves human because they've got feelings too. Werewolves have feelings too.
Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, werewolves have feelings too. Just saying. Uh,
It's true.
Now,
It's true.
it is absolutely true. Now, Don, I totally get your point, or Caroline, I totally get your point. Now, what I want to, the, I think that what used to be done long ago, where you had this long lead in, and it was like this huge description of like, and it the down to the minutia of a house and a tree and blah blah blah, and there wasn't really any action yet, right? And then like 100 pages in, then all of a sudden, boom, the main character. Now you find out there is a main character, and now all of a sudden the main character is, walking down the street to get a cup of coffee. I agree. No, readers don't go for that anymore. It's not that you can't do it, it's just that very few readers are actually going to stay engaged that long to get to the plot. And you just posted, weave it in and keep up the action in the presence. I am hearing that is that's exactly where I'm going. You still need all of that, right? To Ben's point, you still need the character development, you still need the world building, but now you've got to be much more creative. You need to be much more clever in how you weave it into the story itself so that you keep it. And when we say action, action doesn't mean you've got fight scene, fight scene, fight scene, right? Action just means that the characters are continuing to interact and you're continuing to see the story itself move forward. And as they're moving forward, then you're also still learning about the environment, the world, the characters themselves. An example would be, I was actually recently editing a work that um, the author, and this is for someone I was mentoring, the um the author would say, and he walked into the room, and this was after he did all this stuff, right? So really almost the entire uh chapter was a flashback. Well, why are well that's quickly going to get a reader to be pretty bored, right? Because they're not in the scene, they're not in the moment of what's occurring. So instead, and we all, by the way, do this, right? Because oftentimes we're exploring, we are understanding, we are learning what the story is about as we are actually authoring it, right? So but instead, my challenge to this author was to go back and look at each chapter and identify those sections where he was basically saying, Joe walked in the room and he sat down for a cup of coffee and reflected on all this stuff that happened in the last like week, and then came back to him having a cup of coffee. All right. Well, instead of that, why don't we just have the entire chapter be about what the hell he did that he was reflecting on? Because the everything around it, right, that framing of Joe having a cup of coffee, it did not add to the story because all he was doing in that top story was having a cup of coffee. There was nothing actually occurring. And by reframing it and having it being within scene, even if it's in the past, that's okay, but because it makes it more active, right? It makes it more action oriented. The same thing is true with sharing back information. Sometimes another technique that a lot of authors use is they'll have more than one primary character who are sitting down and they have dialogues about things that have happened in the past. And that way, the reader feels like they're part of that dialogue, they're part of that conversation. And so the reader is learning at the same time the main characters are. And that can be very attractive, right? That can actually really kind of pull the reader in because they're like, okay, this is cool, right? I'm a part of this now. Again, versus having a character sitting down and reflecting on how they really enjoyed whatever dreams they had the night before, right? Again, that's a very passive, a very inactive uh there's no conversation, there's no action, right? There's nothing that's actually occurring other than the character sitting there and thinking a lot. So all things to kind of keep in mind.
That's the skill of the author as creator, and to get the desired impact and effect of what the characters are doing. And Lisa reminded me of a book of poems. I can't remember the author, but the title of it is "The Last Time I Saw Amelia Earhart," and
Mm,
it's a series of poems from different perspectives about the last time you saw Amelia Earhart, and together they form, individually they form a poem, together they form a story. And oh, okay,
Mm,
you get it. And James Carlos Blake wrote a couple of novels. One's called it's historical fiction, but it's called The Friends of Pancho Villa, where each chapter is someone's testimony about an event. So where you see the event being described by a witness, but the collection of those comes together to have a whole novel. And the same way with the Pistolier about John Wesley Harding. Uh, Based on his life that you may have read in a history book or not, but this gives it life because a character who may or may not have existed is telling the story of what they saw and lived through and witnessed. And so it's the craft. That's what it comes down to. It's just the craft of storytelling and how you want to tell it with the things that pay off. It's like Tale of Two Cities with when they were digging up graves. You had no idea why has
mm,
Dickens taken me to the graveyard to dig up a grave and rob a grave, but
mm,
he knows that later on this is why, and it's going to
right.
come up and say, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." And
Uh,
that goes back to the craft, and that's the craft of storytelling.
Caroline says, but the trick is to keep it in the present, but to create a full blown character. Well, and yes, and uh, how you create that full blown character, to Ben's point, it's all about the craft, right? So a lot of times as well, when we're learning the craft of writing, we will tell people, you know, like, Joanne was depressed. No, no, no. Show me. Allow me to experience it, because in that you're also exploring the story itself. There's a reason Joanne was depressed, and uh, there's her depression is impacting other areas of the story as well, and you need to acknowledge that, right? So it's really having that understanding of your characters. And I mean, and this is for any genre. I mean, I realize that what I'm saying, you could easily bucket it and say, oh, psh, that's all that literary fancy shit, right? But the reality is, this is any genre. You want to be able to understand what your characters are doing and why, and share it with your reader in a way that is engaging. And engaging is not saying Joanne was angry. I need to see it. I need to experience it as the reader, as well as the other characters in the story. They need to see it and experience it. It can't simply be a tell. So again, it all goes back to the craft of writing, and which that also reminded, when Ben was talking, that was another time when I challenged someone I was mentoring. They had a habit of saying, you know, um, Jill was furious, right? And then, but then it was like you never really dug into. So, okay, so show me Jill being furious. Don't tell me. So, a lot of what I would recommend to this author was, okay, I want you to highlight when you tell me someone's emotional state, and then I want you to cross out when you tell me someone's emotional state, and then I want you to highlight where you're showing me that emotional state. And what that did is that caused the author to realize, holy crap, I was just telling you all the time, right? So and so's sad, so and so's angry, so and so's happy. And oftentimes their behavior after being told, the reader was told so and so is happy, did not necessarily support the statement that Jill was happy. And so that made this author realize that they really needed to have a better understanding of her characters and their behaviors, and really kind of flesh out their characters' emotional responses to what was happening within the story. Because I'll be honest, it completely changed the entire book, which it would, right? So,
And
uh,
I think the Caroline's point about a full blown character.
Mm,
You're showing people in snippets of scenes and their actions within a scene. It may not be a full blown character until well into the story of they've got this capacity and that capacity and that capacity, and it comes together in different situations. So you have situational characters that may or may not be full blown. Even at the end, they may not be full blown. Uh, I may make a lot of people mad here, but Hemingway's characters I've got no sympathy for whatsoever. And they just because it was well written, it's very well written, no doubt. But the characters, when you start thinking about them as people, you kind of say, well, yeah, you kind of get what you deserve. And
I was gonna say, yeah,
but
you're kind of a jackass. Oh well.
yeah, yeah. So, but just draw me into the story with some better characters. But that's just me. That may just be me. Don't send your letters.
Well, I mean, one of the best, another werewolf story, called Mongol, and which is by a brilliant author whose name, of course, is going to escape me right now. But he is a multi-award winning horror writer, and the reason, in my opinion, that he is a horror writer is because when he is writing about these different characters, these in the these horror stories, he's looking at them as human beings, for lack of a better term, right? He's looking at them for as full beings with emotions and desires and reactions and responses. And what's the name of it? I'm reading a book now. What is it? Where the crawdads sing. Is that right?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's it. I'm reading it
is it?
too.
Yeah, where the crawdad. Oh my God, everyone's freaking reading this thing. Um, what
I saw the
really?
movie. It really.
Oh, I have not
I
seen
was
the
like,
movie.
I was 100
I
pages
just.
in and saw the movie.
Oh, okay. But what's interesting about where the crawdad sing is that the narrator, the author, what she keeps doing is she introduces characters as cliches, right? So, like there's the Marsh Girl, and everybody knows all about the Marsh Girl, who's the primary character, right, or one of them. And but at the same time, because she uses multiple points of view, she's introducing the Marsh Girl as the cliche of the Marsh Girl, right, as this two-dimensional character, and then she introduces you to the Marsh Girl, and so you get to see uh, the Marsh Girl and how the Marsh Girl actually behaves, and what she's up to, and then you see how the people in the town perceive her and respond to her. And it's really interesting, and it's this actually you also see where the Marsh Girl has her own perspective, her own concept of different people within the town, and her own biases, right? Because then you've also got the guy from town who's like, he's the what you call it? I'm looking up the name of the author. Delia, Delia Owens, Owens, if anybody wants to look it up. But she does it across the board with all the characters. Almost all of them originally start off with someone making a reference to, the the high school jock, right? And is
The
completely
best
this two
quarterback
dimensional.
we've ever known.
Right, and he's totally two-dimensional, completely cliche, right? But then boom, within a chapter, she'll then give you a fuller view into that character so that you don't put the book down in all honesty, right? But it's a really interesting way to bring forward a character and then flesh that character out. So, let's see. Caroline says, "I agree, Lisa. Hard to explain how to craft how to someone hard to explain to someone craft, and agree, Ben. They were. Hemingway had his own problems. Oh, Hemingway was just a mess. Let's just deal with that now. Most artists, let's face that too.
It was very well written. It was well written.
Yeah, almost every legendary artist, actually legendary anybody, has had some serious problems, whether we find out about it while they're alive or not. So anyway, yeah, he was a big game hunter. Yes, absolutely. That's what he was. And nope, I got nothing to do with that. Nope, nope. Nope, nope, nope. So
See what I did?
we have only 5 minutes left, guys. So uh take in those 5 minutes, if you have any other comments or questions, please feel free to go ahead and pop them into the comments section, and we will do our best to answer them now. If you are watching this and it is not Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Pacific time, then Eastern time, then please feel free to go ahead and pop your questions in the comments section, because we do come back and we do review those questions, and we make sure that we address your comments and questions in a subsequent session. And if you're not comfortable with that, if you'd rather, you're also welcome to go ahead and shoot me off an email at lisa@runningwildpress.com, and I am more than happy to I'll totally read it, and then if you're comfortable, then we're happy to address whatever your questions are in a future session. So, and Caroline says Hemingway was a mess in more ways than one. Yes, that's all I'm saying.
No said, poor thing.
Caroline says, "Great to see you. Got on late. Company from out of town here." Well, God bless you for even coming on. And when
Because
you've
you got
got
that great
company,
guest room.
yeah,
They heard you had
obviously.
that great guest room, and they all show up now.
That's right. See, that's all you had to do is advertise it, and all of a sudden you're going to be getting a whole bunch of new friends. Don't forget that. Absolutely. Oh, and then guys, don't forget that I am actually going to be doing an appearance at Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore on October 18th. It's going to be both live on it'll be live streamed, and it will also be in person. So either way, I would love to see you there. It's actually going to be hosted, I mean, by obviously Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore in San Diego. But I will be there with Jonathan Mayberry, New York Times bestseller and a multiple award winner. And he is going to be asking me, I'm sure, incredibly complex questions that we can only hope I will have an answer for. I'm going to be more curious to see what the hell I say, because I would not be surprised if I am making crap up on the fly. So if you see me speak somewhere after that and you're like, what? She did not say that last time, there is probably a good reason. So I'm
You can
just
always fall back on quantum physics.
I can always fall back on quantum physics. Absolutely. Absolutely. But that is the launch date, the official launch date, October 18th for Cure. So I would love to see you guys there again. Either way, either in person or online, we would absolutely love to have you with us. So cool. And again, I want to acknowledge Ben was my editor for Cure. And so he may have a bias about it, but he would know if it completely blows or not. Dawn says, "Thanks for your help, guys. Have a good night."
I
Dawn,
got to
thank
read it
you.
first.
He did. He got to read it first. Dawn, again, thank you so much for joining. You and Caroline are both absolutely amazing. We love having you here with us every week. We just have a total blast. And I can't, honestly, I really hope you guys pick it up. I would love to get your feedback on Cure. I really do hope that you enjoy it. We've gotten so far we've been blessed with some really amazing reviews, some really fantastic blurbs, and I'm just thrilled that people are enjoying it. So I actually just started on the follow up, as I'd mentioned, and man, I better blow the first one away. I'm just saying. So, oh my God, Dawn, you pre-ordered it? Oh, thank you so much. Let
Nice.
me know. Dawn, email me and let me know, because I have book plates, and I am I'll write whatever you want and I'll send you a book plate. So let me know where to send it, and let me know what to write, and I'm down. I was also thinking about, I've got 1 minute real fast. I was thinking about for the follow up doing a couple of contests. One to have someone's name in the book, and another one to if you guys want me to come and talk to your favorite book club or what have you, I would be more than happy to. Let me know if that's something you'd actually want me to do, because I'll do it. And if you have any other ideas for me to open my big mouth and come visit. So with that, Dawn asked, "What about quantum physics?" Damned if I know.
That's where we started tonight. We were asking for questions about anything, including quantum physics.
Anything.
We'll answer. We will
We
answer.
will. That's right. But we're not going to right now, because guess what? Ha ha! It's the end of the hour.
Saved by the bell.
Ah, so anyway, we will see you guys this time next week. Hope you have a phenomenal rest of the evening and a phenomenal week. Looking forward to seeing you then. Ciao.
Bye bye. Have a good